Okay, you should be good to go.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the September 2021 Historic Resources Committee meeting for the City of Charlottesville. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I will be operating things for this meeting on the virtual side of things to make things run smoothly. I'm going to pass things off to the HRC chair, Phil Varner, momentarily. But I just wanted to say that if you're a member of the public and you wish to provide any public comment for this meeting, we first ask that you register for this meeting through Zoom, and you can do this through the city calendar, which is on the city website. At the beginning of our meeting, just in a few short moments, we'll have the public comment section. When we get to that, you can raise your hand in the participant tab using the raise hand feature. And we can get you so you're able to speak. With that, though, I think that's the only comment that I have, so I can pass things off to our chair to get things started for today's meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I call this meeting to order. I guess I'm gonna hand it right back over to Robert and do a roll call attendance.
Sorry, I'm just pulling up the roster. I should remember to have this up each month.
No, that's fine. And we heard from, oh my gosh,
Kay, I know Kay won't be able to join us today. And I didn't hear from Dee Dee, but I did hear from Kay that Dee Dee probably wouldn't be able to make it as well. So I'll just go ahead and just say that you're present when I go through the list. Sally Duncan. Heather Hill.
I'm here.
Genevieve Keller.
I'm here.
Jessica Livingston.
Here.
Rachel Lloyd.
Here.
Margaret O'Brien.
Here.
Jillian Schmidt.
Here.
Kay Slaughter won't be here. Dee Dee Smith. Oh, Dee Dee did make it. Hi, Dee Dee. And Phil Varner.
Here.
Great, thank you. And Jeff Werner is my colleague and on city staff, and he's here as well.
Okay, public comment?
Yes, I will briefly read the public comment section, and then you can raise your hand if you'd like to provide any comment. At the beginning of each meeting, not more than 10 minutes will be allowed for the introduction of any guests and public comments. Speakers may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes and shall begin by identifying their name and address. So please raise your hand, or if you're calling in, press *9 if you provide to, I do see a raised hand from Frank Dukes. I'm going to allow you to talk, and then you'll need to unmute yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I think you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So good to see everybody, especially the couple of former members of the Blue Ribbon Commission on Race, Memorials, and Public Spaces, and actually calling in to note that one of our recommendations had to do, of course, with the slave auction block and the building labeled number nothing. And my understanding is that building is actually up for sale. So I don't have a, I don't have a plan. It's a lot of money, but I just wanted to bring it actually to your attention. If it's not already to your attention, bring it to the public's attention, that this could be an opportunity to undertake the larger redesign of Court Square and memorialization with the opportunity, that is provided by that building actually being up for sale. So that's the only comment that I wanted to make for that. Just understanding that it's been, almost 5 years since we made our recommendations, and that building had not been up for sale, and so it is an opportunity that probably doesn't come very often. So thank you for your work, and I will conclude my comment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dukes. I see another raised hand from Tom Chapman. Mr. Chapman, I will allow you to talk. You'll have 2 minutes and you'll need to unmute yourself. Oh. I think you'll need to unmute yourself, Tom. Yeah, there you are.
Sorry, can you hear me? Thank you. No, I just wanted to simply say thank you, Jeff Werner and Robert, for help with procuring some funding for the research for the Penn Park project and the unmarked burials out there. I think it's a very important project for the city in terms of looking at these early African-American enslaved community members who make up some of the first families of Charlottesville, with Gilmer and Craven and the Hotop family playing a very major role in early Charlottesville history. I think they're enslaved community that supported and did the work in these areas. We need to understand them better. I also hope to look for future continued collaboration with HRC, and I believe that with our research and understanding more about the descendant community, there would be lots of overlap in regards to the Court Square and slave auction block work, that we will be having conversations with the same people, and also probably finding new connections and being able to expand our understanding of what this descendant community is, not just in the sense of looking at what Montpelier has put out with their historic resource slave matrix, looking at how that is being incorporated into museum studies, in the sense that it's a larger descendant group and you may not understand the genealogy. I think what we will be able to do is actually pinpoint the genealogy down to the very details of how we can connect it to 1804 or 1760 and all the way up to the present. So that's a very exciting opportunity, and I want to thank you all for helping us and also collaborating, and looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chapman. Mr. Chair, I don't see any other raised hands for public comment.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Next on to the approval of the agenda. I think there was some discussion about possibly moving the Vinegar Hill Park discussion earlier if Ms. Harris was able to attend, but as she wasn't, I don't think we have any amendments to the agenda. Does anybody have any amendments to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So I'll make the motion. Yep, I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a motion from Ms. Bryant and a second from Ms. Lloyd. Please indicate your approval with a sound or visual. Any opposed? Seeing none. The agenda is approved. Next, approval of the meeting notes. They were in the packet. Does anybody have any changes or additions to those meeting notes? Okay, hearing none. Could I get a motion to approve the meeting notes?
I move to approve the meeting notes.
Second.
Okay, and with that, please indicate your approval of the meeting notes with a hand or sound. Okay, any opposed?
I abstain.
Thank you, Heather. And seeing none, the approval of the meeting notes passes. The next item on the agenda is engagement for the descendant community for Court Square slave auction block site. We have 15 minutes allocated for this in the agenda. And I know we had hoped to have some discussion about Dr. Wilson and possibility of her either being here or having a plan with that. But I don't believe we've heard back on that yet. So I guess, Jillian, do you have any updates on that or anything else that you think we should do to move forward with the engagement?
I emailed Dr. Wilson twice, haven't heard back. I've approached a mutual contact of ours to kind of nudge her a little bit and see if we can get a response. Anyway, so I will see if that works, you know, and if not, then maybe we can think of another person, a potential resource person. Phil, I think you had brought up someone else. Or is there possibilities?
Yes, there's another person who may be a good resource for this. Dr. Ann Bailey. She wrote a book. She's written a couple of books about enslavement. The most recent of which is called The Weeping Time, about the Butler plantation auction in South Carolina or Georgia. I keep forgetting which one it is.
Georgia.
The Butler family owned them in both states, and has done a lot of auction-oriented research and scholarship. So she may be another person who may not necessarily have the same focus on descendant engagement that Dr. Wilson has, but also has this as a pretty significant part of her academic focus.
Yeah. And to say something further, at the Memory Project at UVA that I direct, we have interviewed a number of candidates, graduate student researchers who would be embarking on doing some of this archival work in consultation with descendant groups and other research groups such as the Central Virginia History Researchers and the Burke Brown Stepp Afro-American Genealogy Group, descendant groups, descendant enslaved communities at UVA, and also the President's Commission at UVA, President's Commission on Slavery, and the genealogy researcher there, Shelley Murphy and stuff. So anyway, we hope to make some offers very soon and get them on their way. And so, you know, at some point it might be nice to bring them in here just to say hi and, you know, who they are, you know, because they're going to be going around town and meeting with other stakeholders, you know, on this issue. And then hopefully with guidance from us, you know, they can be making periodic reports to different constituency groups, you know, descendants and historical researchers. And if we decide as HRC that it would be useful, they could then draft a report for City Council just about their preliminary findings in terms of this research on the sale of enslaved persons in Court Square generally.
Okay. Is there anything you think we need to plan on doing prior to engaging with Dr. Wilson, like having additional virtual engagement sessions or anything else? And I say that because I think 6 months ago, we thought we were going to be at a very different place right now in terms of the pandemic and in terms of, I mean, mostly in terms of pandemic and what we could actually be doing. So I guess the question is, do you think we should go forward with anything now or simply wait for engagement with Dr. Wilson and more research and all those things to come out of the other things that are going forward?
I think what these, our last meeting with descendants was in June, so which, you know, wasn't that long ago actually. And I drew up some notes. I think I distributed those. Just, you know, from the 3 meetings that we had, kind of with highlights of what descendants had said. I think what might be useful is to have Dr. Wilson, you know, if we can get her, to come talk with us, and perhaps have some descendants as well join that working group session to, you know, kind of share their feedback, what went well, what, you know, maybe needs some tweaking, you know, and that sort of thing, to kind of hear from directly affected community, you know, what their experience was about that. So maybe if it could be kind of a, you know, kind of a, I don't know, joint session. And then, you know, of course, you know, members of the public can listen in. I would want the graduate student researchers and other interested researchers to also be there kind of listening in, I think, you know, so that we're kind of in, you know, in step with one another. Yeah, I think, you know, on, to go forward. I don't think anything's needed before that, kind of to prepare. I think, you know, what I would do would be just to send my notes to her, you know, and talk with her, and, you know, and if we're still, you know, if she's not available, then, you know, maybe approaching someone else, you know. But yeah, I would hope that we'd be started, you know, I would have hoped by now, you know, but yeah, it's been, I don't know, I checked back in with her last night or yesterday and didn't hear after I sent something a couple of weeks ago. So we'll try again. You know, people are kind of, the semester's getting started, you know, that sort of thing. So we'll see again. But yeah, I'm hoping that at least the kind of the research steps can go forward, you know. That's a lot of mucking around in archives and coordinating in terms of data management. That's going to be a thing too, you know, in order for it to be accessible, you know, and searchable, all that kind of good stuff.
So there's two opportunities. So let me frame it, you know, I guess way we can communicate with council. So I sent out to you all a month ago, and also sent out yesterday the RFPs that were for the downtown parks, and just to be, there were two of them for the pretty much the same thing. There was some slight modifications, but I think in tandem there's good stuff in both. But part of, as you saw in there, was that research and community engagement phase. And so there's one thing we can do is this process results in recommendations to council that would be incorporated into whatever they do with the RFP. Actually, there's three things. The second would be that the committee recommend council revisit the RFPs, revisit the downtown park thing, and incorporate this process we're talking about into it. Because the key is that there will be that engagement phase when they do something, that it's sort of not duplicated, or it's I'm trying to say it's like not chicken and egg or cart before the horse, but how do we, and then the third piece is really to sort of say, you know, separate this all out from any of this other park stuff and use the language in that RFP and say, you know, here's what we're doing, and we want then the city to incorporate it into a project of thus and so, with a specific recommendation that comes out of the committee's work. So I know that sounds like three very, very subtle things, but they're you know, that's the opportunity I think that we have. But just to make sure that if we do embark on I think with what Jillian is speaking of, not where to embark, it's being done, is how does that get rolled into what we hope the city will do with the downtown parks? Or do we want to say, this is being done, and we're going to be coming back with a recommendation on how to implement it?
I see that Jenny has her hand raised.
Oh, yes, I did. Several months ago, when I suggested that we try to engage Mabel Wilson, my intent was that we would not just be talking with her about engagement and how to do engagement, because I think we've already embarked upon that, but how we would do a kind of engagement that would inform the planning and design process for some interpretation and memorialization, commemoration of the process of transactions involving those who were enslaved. And she may not be available. I think she's just won another award recently. She may be too busy. She's uniquely qualified because she lived in Charlottesville as a student, and she directed this project at UVA. But I'm intrigued by Phil bringing up Ann Bailey, and I'm just making an off-the-cuff suggestion that maybe if we could use some of our funds, perhaps we could do a webinar or something with her where she could do a presentation of her work. We could make that available to the descendant community and the larger community, those who are interested in our work, because we haven't done anything visible in a while, and it would be showing good faith, and we would all learn something as well from her research. So if we had an opportunity to do that this fall, I think that might help us along and be part of this process.
I like that idea a lot, you know, and this is something that, I mean, we can, you know, talk with staff, communication staff for the city, you know, about this possibility, how this would go. I'd be happy to help promote it through the Memory Project, through the Democracy Initiative at UVA, to kind of, you know, to kind of pump up our attendance numbers. But I think that's a really good idea.
I mean, it's been my experience over the time of the pandemic that webinars and panel discussions that are related to this topic have been very well attended and have helped to inch the needle along and led to some other really good things. So if we could, I'm not making it a motion, but it's just a suggestion for something we might be able to do.
Yeah. Thanks, great idea.
Okay. Should we direct staff to, or Jelaine, would you be interested in engaging with Dr. Bailey on possibly doing that? I don't think we would need to allocate any funds right now for that, but we can begin an engagement now. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would be willing. Yeah, and then talk with staff as well. Thank you. So I guess going back to Jeff's earlier comments, I think that I've seen this as trying to frame what we see as, or what we see, or sorry, I think that's actually the wrong way to say it. Frame what we are gathering from descendants and putting together as a frame for how the parks process should go forward. And I think that is a really critical part, because one of the difficulties I see in a lot of these things is that we have interests in Penn Park and Court Square Park and Market Street Park and Vinegar Hill Park and probably several other locations, but we actually don't have any authority over them because Parks has that authority. And I think our interest in this is making sure the frame is set up right so that we provide all the descendant feedback, all the historical context, all the desires that have been synthesized through this committee as to what those park redesigns actually go forward as. Because otherwise, I feel like we would probably just get another nice park, which is fine. But if we as the Historical Resources Committee want to see the historical aspect of those parks front and center, we need to provide all that information to parks, because their interest is not in doing all that research and bringing all that in and putting the history front and center. Their interest is more in the park aspect of it and the recreational aspect of it. So I think that we have to do that and can't simply say, yeah, history should be important, and then they be required to make that history front and center.
So, raise my hand.
Oh.
I mean, my understanding is that the Parks Department has a pretty clearly defined master planning process for all of their parks, and that it may be that they want to run that process for all of these, especially the downtown parks. And, you know, the programming for any of them might change. And so I do think that it would be incumbent on us to help sort out where the historic resources really need to shine, and where other programming may really need to be the key drivers. You know, are you going to have chocolate festivals and pride festivals and so on in one park, and commemorative features in another? And I think a broader community engagement needs to be involved to sort those questions out.
Might be interesting to have a joint meeting with the Parks Committee, board, whatever they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not sure.
Is Penn Park a joint park with the county or no?
It doesn't appear to be.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Those things are a little bit unclear, but it seems to clearly be a city park. The parks director has left, so we are. That was the interim.
The new one left.
The new one, yeah. So.
Because Darden is joint too. I mean, we know Ivy Creek is, but I think Darden is. But
yeah, Darden is also.
Darden is joint for sure.
Penn is entirely city run.
Okay, that makes it easier.
Right. There's the ownership, and then there's like the management, and there's always. But but to be clear, the RFPs for the downtown parks, there is and in that the larger document, Parks has its sort of standard design methodology, but there's also very specific language that City Council required within the RFP to address engagement of certain groups, individuals, the Senate community, et cetera. So that's where that. I mean, and Dee Dee, you know, from the city government side, there's the, you know, if we want to express something specific, then we have text to work from, and then that would be because you know how then that's put out there, you know, how it's written into the RFP. There's also a section there about qualifications. We certainly could, if there are recommendations of individuals or a certain you know, specialty that we think should come to the fore. Also, all of this is based on the assumption that the city is going to do something with the parks redesign or something like that. But I don't know another way, you know, means to an end that I mean, other than what we would present to council as a recommendation. In order for it to become realized, it ultimately would have to be in some form that the RFP follows. So that's why I keep referring back to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I think you recommended this, and I agree, Jeff, that we should be working towards something by the end of the year that is a recommendation, and at least what information we have by then, historical information, to council for at least Court Square Park, but likely that will also relate to Market Street Park, and then Vinegar Hill Park also, which we'll discuss in a little bit. So I think working towards that by the end of the year is a good interim goal as we continue this process. Additionally, Mr. Dukes mentioned the Number Nothing is for sale, which I saw earlier this week. Surprisingly, it's for sale. Does anybody have any comments on that or ideas around that? Yeah, Rachel.
I don't have any major comment, but I do recall that several months ago we received a package of information from an independent group that was interested in working towards converting that building to a museum. And I don't know if they have become more formalized or have a board or anything official, but I do know there was local interest in purchasing and protecting and updating that building for museum and other interpretive purposes.
Yeah, my understanding is what they wanted the city to acquire it, and that's why they had been contacting us, or the committee, is to encourage the city to acquire the property. I guess again, this committee could make a recommendation to council to consider that. That would be the only action available, really. Say we support this idea or not. But honestly, I think the acquisition of property right now is not in the cards for the city. But that doesn't mean a recommendation can't be made by the committee.
What's it cost?
It's like 1.35.
Yeah, I would say probably.
Yeah.
With
an assessment of, with an assessment of 665,000.
Wow, so it's twice the assessment, you're saying?
According to the GIS, which I just looked up, yes.
Very interesting. The real estate market here is just, yeah.
And so also to put the significance of the building in context, it and the courthouse are the only buildings that still exist in which auctions took place, because the other locations, the Eagle Tavern, the Swan Tavern, and the Jefferson Hotel and the Central Hotel have all been demolished since then. So that the significance is that it is the only extant building that was specifically involved in the slave trade in Court Square.
Now, we know that what happened within the courts where things were recorded. It's the area itself, and I don't know. To me, it's the ads, and Phil, you've looked at them as well. The ads typically refer to what the doorstep of, or in front of, or at the corner of. So I often worry that the number nothing is come to represent a space that maybe isn't, it's I don't know. We've talked about it a lot, but I think that the area still exists. That's those spaces in which these things occurred still exist. I less about the building, but just again, I try to. When I speak to people, and really they get so zeroed in on a spot at Court Square, and then you sort of have to explain what was going on in the larger context. You almost need. And I think I talked to Jelaine once about this, that why it would be interesting to find, and we are actually revealing some of this with the work at Penn Park, which has been extraordinary. The names. And so you can't say necessarily that this individual was bought and sold here, but you can say at locations around Court Square, people such as XYZ were sold on this date, that date. And just to try to personalize that entire space and kind of get that focus away from, only in that building or only in that building.
Yeah, and
my 2 cents.
Sorry.
I was going to say that I don't want to get down to historical nitpicking. You know what I mean? I think we do have some documentation from Gail Schulman that on Jefferson Street there, was probably the actual space, what is now probably the sidewalk or something like that, abutting the building, but that was the location of the establishment of Benson and Brothers. So I don't want to get all nitpicky. It has come to stand for something. Of course, it's not the only place, but it's a place and it's extant. And people have kind of grasped on it. And that's true of lots of historically significant locations. It was in this general area. And this was one of several locations, you know, and it's kind of become a stand-in. And I guess I don't have a problem with that, you know, as, you know, in terms of historical interpretations, you know, I feel like it can be pointed, you know, that it can be, the narrative can be complicated, even if it's kind of, you know, located in one place, even if the, you know, interpretation kind of radiates from there, you know.
I just want to correct something, because it appears that that building is divided into 2 parcels with 1 address. And so there are 2 parcels, which if you do, and so there are 2 different assessments. So I want to clarify that when you add them both up, it is 1.1. I was not clear because there's 2, you have to click on 2 different parcels. They're both owned by the same owner, but it is for the entire building.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's what's being offered for sale, not just half of it, because there's 2 separate doors. So there are two separate parcels. I'm so sorry. I wanted to clarify that. I realized that after I started clicking around more.
So half of 0 or 2 times 0 is 1.1. Is that?
It's one of them is 4.
That was a joke.
4, 6. Oh, sorry.
It's complicated math.
I know. It's like, but my humanities addled brain can't wrap myself around it.
Again, not to get in the weeds, what's its square footage?
Of the actual facility.
4,248.
I'm sorry, what is it?
4,248 square feet. That's good.
So the whole property or the actual facility?
Well, if the city owned it, I just wondered what the, you know, usable space would be.
The building square footage, according to Zillow, is 4,000.
Oh, maybe in like an annex office could be, you know, if there were kind of some kind of joint purchase or something, perhaps an annex office or either a private entity or a public one, you know, could be on the top floor. I mean, anyway, just thinking of possibilities. You know.
It provides a unique opportunity because it's for sale now. And what led us down this path initially was the resistance of the owner to have signage on the building. So it does provide opportunities. I'm going to add, I'm not opposed to people doing this. I just see it as a major undertaking. Somebody who was involved for, I guess, 19 years to bring Jefferson School to fruition and hand it off to the foundation, and that is something that the city has supported and hopefully will continue to support. I would have a concern that it might dilute that effort that's already ongoing and has been well funded, and the initiative as well for the Vinegar Hill Monument there, which is not to say I don't think something should happen here. And then just my personal experience of being on a board that owns and operates 6 museums. And during the pandemic, I have to tell you, it's been one of the major challenges of my life to be in consultation with people who've had to open and close, apply for PPP funds, wait out getting the forgiveness. I mean, most nonprofits and cultural institutions have had a lot of funding issues over the years, and some of them have come out of the pandemic well and others haven't. Many were already divesting. So going into a museum operation, everybody has to do it with their eyes wide open because it's a long-term commitment. It's not just acquiring the building and designing the exhibitions and doing the rehab. You know, it's something you've got to do every year, you know, every day, and require staff and volunteers. So
yeah, this could also be a good opportunity with the transaction of the building that the new owner could possibly want to have some sort of memorialization or marker there again.
There could be agreements about use and interpretation, and if there was a private entity that wanted to take it on, it just seems like it's a big initiative for the city to take on given its other commitments. But that's not for me to say. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, the purchase is a large outlay of capital, but the rehabilitation for a building like that to support public use is huge. And little museums like that close every week, even before the pandemic. Right. So it's, as Jenny says, requires a major financial and sort of planning and operational commitment for the long term to make it work. And so I think we should maybe think about another set of recommendations that the city should encourage the general preservation of the building, and any updates ideally would be undertaken in accordance with best preservation practices, and see if it's possible to, and get new owners to incorporate interpretation somehow on or around the building.
Yeah, that might, I mean, that's a kind of more modest and perhaps achievable goal to, see about that, with the new owner, that, now that there's a bit more public knowledge, about the location, they might be amenable.
It might be a timing between owners where if the building was cleared out, it might be available for a certain amount of time so that people could experience it in different ways. I know prior to pandemic, Preservation Piedmont did a number of sort of pop-up tours working with realtors to make properties available when their owners were no longer living there, or when they were offered for sale and they were equipped for people to come in. So this might be a unique opportunity for people to, for a certain amount of time. And that might be something the committee could be involved in, maybe with the Historical Society and African American Heritage Center. It could be
it could be Preservation Piedmont.
Informative
great idea.
That could be worked out.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, this has been a great discussion. And I'd like to wrap up this agenda item now. Does anybody have any final comments on this?
I just want to say I think it would be an even better site for the Historical Society, but I'll leave it at that.
Well, Tom is on, so.
Can I say one more thing while we're still on this? This just in. That my intermediary contact was able to get a hold of Mabel, and she will check, and she apologizes that it seemed to have gone to spam or something, or she missed it. But anyway, she would like to engage with this. So just to update them.
That's great.
Yeah. And I'll send blast out an email to us, when we hear about available dates.
Great. It's great to hear. Okay, the next item is the downtown walking tour map update. Dee Dee, I think you're the only committee member here, so subcommittee member.
Yeah, and it's been, this last month, obviously.
Dee Dee, you're breaking. You're breaking up.
The designer was. Oh, am I? Okay, I'll turn off my video.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm in Philadelphia, and I'm in somebody else's space here. So, if I break up, I'm sorry.
Sure.
But anyway, you all got we voted on the designer thing. We have engaged with her in terms of getting started, but we haven't gotten started. And it's really, I don't know kind of what more to add to what we've already talked about. We are still obviously on the 3 geographic areas as 3 parts of a whole, but anyone can be taken. We're also still considering the format like the walking tours of both UVA's enslaved African-American walking tour, as well as the Heritage Centers, the African-American Heritage Centers Star Hill one. So that kind of format that the designer was the one to design. So in that light, we've really been discussing how to really do it in a both geographic and thematic way, as opposed to just pointing to a building and saying, and this building was built by so and so, but rather if having more of a several stops that are geographic, but making them thematic and using multiple structures, in other words, citing multiple structures that are on the map to cover the theme. And they would be such things as, like on the downtown mall, you might sort of up by Hit City Hall start out with transportation, where you've got 3-notched road, you've got the railroad station, the CNO railroad station, and the livery for where the streetcars began. I mean, that would, and that was really around 1850 and to 1900 was really the kickstart for a lot of commerce. I've been very inspired by going back and watching Monticello's video of Monticello to Main Street, and the whole Hemmings West 1800 to 1850. I know I'm rounding here. I'm very much rounding. It's just a wonderful story. And that's really kind of the middle 3 blocks of Main Street there. And I think that would be a really great focus for, again, really you can't really point so much to buildings, but where buildings were, because a lot of those current buildings were built after that point. It's kind of going backwards in time there. If you're starting 1850 to 1900, let's say, I'm just again rounding. But I think you can really, by clumping them. Arts and entertainment was another theme, because of course you've got the Paramount and Jefferson, and then the what Lafayette used to be there. That kind of theme, we were sort of looking at that. And of course you end up at Vinegar Hill Park. And that's the transition into the next tour, which goes along from there to along Market Street. So you've got McGuffey with education, you've got the Elks Club with fraternal organizations. I mean, these, again, I'm just throwing these out as the kind of themes we've talked about. And of course, then up into Market Street Park, where you've got lots of stuff. The federal courthouse and civil rights cases, got the original synagogue, even Social Hall, just the stories. I was just reading about how Peter Fawcett, and then actually even Into Freedom, was a real pioneer in civil rights kinds of matters. So anyway, again, so the whole idea is to be more equitable in representation of history, more integrated, not just pockets over here and pockets over there, but really interweaving. I'm sorry, none of that's terribly new. Questions?
Okay. Thanks.
We haven't seen Clay for a while. I mean, we haven't been able to get in touch with Clay, so I don't know if you all have or not. This is the second meeting in a row he has not attended.
I can reach out to him. I haven't heard from him either, Dee Dee.
Okay. So right now Kay and I have, because we've not been able to find him, are the ones. So if anybody else wants to jump in, just a small little subcommittee. And right now at 2 is handy because we don't have to, we can meet without violating FOIA.
So may I ask a question? It looks like there is an estimate perhaps for preparing the PDF for a kind of web ready document.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's some pretty minimal ability to incorporate into online materials. And I wonder if you all talked about more complex or whatever translation to a digital basis.
Yeah. Actually, I wrote to Anne, and we haven't engaged in the conversation, but we've introduced the conversation, and she does have experience with this. In the estimate, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it was a PDF and or at least a design in a design format. I'm not sure what she uses. If she uses, did it say that? I thought it gave some alternatives to PDF. But again, in my experience, this kind of format, depending on what kind of digital expression you want to kind of morph it into, does translate well. It certainly would to an audio translate, because everything's so concise. We did talk about having web backup information on any one of those themes. I don't see that as Anne's arena. I mean, she's a graphic designer. I think we're going to start talking both a different expertise and a different budget. But I would think the city could do that. I mean, it would be up to the HRC to provide the information. I mean, Ann's not providing information. She's providing the design.
Yeah, I think that's how I've looked at this, is that we get the information and the physical walking tour map, and then possibly a PDF version of that done, and then look at how do we take those to other platforms, whether that's a website or mobile audio or whatever. But yeah, once we have that information and a good, a strong graphic design, then we can go forward with that, and don't have to do everything all at once and limit our completion of any one of those things.
And I'll just tell you, I mean, because Jessica, we appreciated, you bringing up the audio, like UVA's audio. That's a huge project to create an app. I mean, you're not talking $8,000, you're talking a minimum of 80. And, but unless it incorporated into the city's, resources that with their apps they already have. So while I think that it's all of this can be adapted to actually, those two are from a platform point of view, very, very different and really different budgets. Does that make sense?
Okay, are there any more comments on this item?
I mean, hopefully we'll get, get some speed. It's whenever you're working with a designer, and I know many of you probably have worked with designers, it's real kind of, back and forth. It's chicken and egg kind of thing. Sometimes the designer's a chicken, sometimes it's the egg. It's a real interactive kind of thing. So once we get going, hopefully it won't take a year.
Hopefully. Okay, the next agenda item is the Vinegar Hill Park signage.
And Mr. Chair, I might ask that I read Jelane's email that she just forwarded from Mabel Wilson, and it seems that she might be available in the October meeting. So I would ask that maybe at the end of this meeting, we could spend a good 5 minutes coordinating specifically how we might like to operate that meeting.
Okay.
And what questions we might present to her, just so we have that in mind heading into October.
Great, that's a great idea.
And just quickly, sorry if I'm making notes and thinking many things. On the map, the walking tour map, where are we as far as, were we moving forward with Ann doing that work? Or what?
Yes, Jeff, you and I will issue the PO this coming week because the committee allocated the funds at the last meeting.
Right. But was there? Hopefully that proposal is good. The thing is that what this committee approved is way more than the designer needs.
Yeah,
so it includes printing costs, but we won't really be able to get exact printing costs until we have the PDF, only because they only are good for 30 days. So we know.
That's what I was peeling that out, and just it seemed like it was like not to exceed. But we've had, I mean, even with most of the things we've done with historic surveys, we'll sometimes not use the full amount. So that's understood. And I just, sorry, it was like oh my gosh, did we just put it on hold or so thank you Robert, thank you.
No, and I assume we've given you everything. If they also, I mean, we gave you the printing costs, you could include that in order to get it approved, but you're right, we'll sort of use it as we need it. And
you guys, you don't have to I mean, really the critical thing is to we can move forward with that PO and get Ann going, and then there's no one has to approve the expense except you all. And
and we'll keep you, of course, keep you abreast. But it's pretty straightforward, and she's got now done this format at least twice locally. I mean, God knows how many times she's done it. So it's pretty predictable.
And if you don't mind,
there's not going to be any big surprises.
Is there and do we have a list of sites for at least the initial downtown walking tour as far as kind of a timeline for this, do we have a selected group of sites or an idea of a selected group, or is that I don't want to be, a year from now still trying to figure out which sites to drop into the template of a map, or at least I would suggest we not be a year from now.
Well, that's where I'm saying that the real iterative process with the designer, and what I talked about before, where the original map was like 36 different very specific sites. And while we are talking about siting sites, CNS, we're not talking about stepping and talking about, one site to fill up one. I mean, at this point, maybe we'll go back and maybe y'all will say, no, we want to do that. Just pick out some buildings and tell us about those buildings, but really incorporating those, again, multiple buildings into a thematic idea, if you will.
So the understanding I have is that there's a loose, so when she said, what are you thinking? In that iterative process, it's of something that's scalable that people can, we can print and distribute, and that working with a select group of sites we have, and she can say, well, at this size, you can do this much. For this size, you can, here's what you can put in, what kind of content. So back and forth, but that we get to the point where there's two products. One is there's this downtown walking tour map, which we can then take to get printed. And the second is that that template that we can go to and drop in different content for different themes. So that is that. Right. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, you are. And an interesting thing that she said when Kay and I met with her in July was one of the most expensive pieces of this is designing the maps. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very map oriented, and the original 36 site one had one map, one small map. And so it was really hard to use the map, but in both the examples that we showed you that we're using as our springboard, the map is more important. I mean, because it's you sort of have a map for each of those sections that's smaller, you're there, and you can really use it to cite different locations and then, as you're talking.
Okay, and then I guess I would just say, if we could come up with, so that we know when we're working on this with Anne, and I have the thing that Kay sent, is that there's a time frame. There's a we should commit to, when we've gone through this kind of iterative process, the design of it, the ideas, that then there is going to be a list of X properties that we drop into that map and provide the content for.
Yes.
And just that we sort of establish for ourselves a date that we're going to do that, or at least or some sort of time frame. Because
so as soon as you get the money approved, we can start working with a designer. So let me know, and we'll start working with her.
Good. On it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. And just keep talking. Let's just keep talking and we'll get it done.
Okay, so the Vinegar Hill Park, the JIT item is the Vinegar Hill Park signage. I think it's a little broader than that too, in what we should do now about Vinegar Hill Park, since the code building is nearing completion and that area is being cleared of construction. Jeff, you were sorry, I'm getting feedback from somewhere. Jeff, I think you've been pushing to, for the HRC to fund putting up signs now.
I thought that there was, I know this is where what's the right word? It's a project that HRC initiated. So that's kind of the point, that if anybody's going to see it through, it's going to be this group. I thought that that to the extent that there are sort of easy decisions about signage, the HRC may want to just step up and say, look, we want to at least do this, and possibly it's that large sign at the top there. But there's, kind of, as I think people have raised, is so say, welcome to Vinegar Hill Park. What is it? Has to be something that goes with that. And whether that comes in the form of a kiosk or a panel sign that you all provide the content for, or even a, what do you call it with the phone? You tip, QR code or whatever, and go, and you can link to our website that has information on it. There's ways to do it, but it's kind of up to you all if we do something or nothing, or suggest council do more, and here's what you all would like to do.
So I'm of the opinion that we should either, that putting up the signs, while I know the argument has been made that we want to stake it out so that nothing else happens to sort of make people forget it, or just sort of notify people that it's a thing. I also think just putting up the signs makes it sort of a very, not a very significant thing, because it doesn't look any different than the rest of the mall, and simply says, here's a park that's nothing. And that my opinion is we should either not put anything up, or we should do something significant with former resident engagement, and make a recommendation to parks to actually do an RFP in the same way that we're doing for the Court Square and other parks.
Sorry, I'm keeping my video off to keep my internet okay. I would think we should do, I mean, it's sort of I see what you're saying, Phil, and I kind of get it. It sort of looks insignificant because it's going to probably go on for a long time. I mean, we could potentially put those flags up to say Vinegar Hill Park coming soon. Something to sort of stake and put our flag in the ground, and say this is our site, and that would maybe spur us to start having community conversations too about what it will ultimately look like.
You just want to be careful because the landmark also says that it's coming in 2009, and we don't want to create something that just people are like years later, this is not happening, and then there's just more of an attention drawn to it.
Yeah, I mean, oh, go ahead.
I was just curious if there's an opportunity to do some sort of like temporary installation involving, local residents and artists, or something to like create engagement within that space for a period of time while it's being, designed or located. Just thinking something that would draw folks there, but also educate them, and then have something that people could kind of go back to. I don't have a specific vision in mind, but just thinking that Charlottesville is this dynamic artistic community, and then also having local residents who have that history. And we kind of talked about that with a different, with the downtown park, but kind of, is there an opportunity to create a space that's temporary public art, engagement to educate folks? Or is that too much? I'm new, so I don't know if that's like going down a rabbit hole of, needing too many approvals.
Well, and I think we did discuss earlier, I think Jenny brought this up, that maybe the exact boundaries, if they are exact, are not well understood perhaps, and maybe it's possible to start with an event that just draws out local knowledge and helps identify what the boundaries of Vinegar Hill really were. And even if we could get to a map, if that's possible, and that could be part of the artistic thinking that you were just mentioning, Jessica, you know, we could start with an event that anyway, that doesn't actually involve putting up anything tangible, but it keeps it in the forefront of the public's mind and may down the road lead to some kind of commemorative construction of whatever size.
Yeah, related to that, several years ago when Scott French was in Charlottesville, he had initiated a project to actually demarcate the boundaries of Vinegar Hill and do some sort of landmark on those corners. And that after he left, it didn't continue. But that and the Vinegar Hill Monument are also things that we sort of have in the mix here of things that could be acted upon.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the maps that I sent you all, and I think that the one image that I found, I think it's from the 30s or 40s, and I colorized it with an app. But I mean, we know the area that was raised, but that's not necessarily what Vinegar Hill was. It's sort of Vinegar Hill, Star Hill, Gas House Hill. There was sort of a blending as tends to happen. But it does, the Vinegar Hill Park, just again, tinkering with those maps yesterday so that I could sort of share something visual. It just always strikes me how it's almost mentally not part of what the community perceives as Vinegar Hill. It's anchored in the historic place name that goes at that section, but and it's the storefronts that and businesses along like where the Omni and the courthouse were, and certainly where the skating rink was, that those were lost. But it just without some context, it seems to suggest, oh, this is Vinegar Hill, and here is where there used to be something, and it just we lose how to communicate the scale to others. A simple way, a very simple way would be to, I think, complete that informational kiosk, complete content for that, and get that installed. I think that would go a long way towards, and I know we don't, the idea of permanent markers, but the way these signs work these days, things can be updated easily. So, but to have at least something that's there anchored into the ground that people can go and read the story of, and then it communicates that sort of that larger history that we want folks to understand. You all have the ability to do it and the opportunity to do it. I think I would suggest even the funding to do that informational type kiosk. But I mean, otherwise it's just, like you said, Bill, it sort of says, it doesn't, it communicates something wrong. Yeah, we could put up a sign that said, yeah, coming soon, someday we hope, Vinegar Hill Park, and we'll tell you more later. But I think if we should take this opportunity to complete that work that was started with Scott French and get something up that people can look to. The other side of that would simply be to go to and to do a poster type project and to approach businesses in that stretch and even up on West Main and ask to do installations within windows. That would be another way to do it.
Yeah, I think putting up a historical sign and having information is important, but I think we should make it very clear that what we do is not sufficient for the city, in dealing with this history, that this park is not absolving the city of their responsibility to address this history.
Phil, I think that in the past, one of the things that has been mentioned as a temporary sort of thing to do is to make use of those images that we, in some way, of the images that we used on the fence installation, which perhaps those could be rotated in combination with a basic informational layout on that informational kiosk or interpretive marker, which I think is what Jeff is referring to roughly. But those images that we already identified and used seems like they're at least one candidate for getting something up, at least on a temporary basis, which again, it's sort of referential to the real space, but still it gives people some sort of images of what actually was there and what we actually are talking about.
Yeah, and I think that somewhat informs my opinion on what we should be doing permanently with the site, and that I thought that the posters were very engaging and that where they were located really drew people who were on the mall to them. And you know, I'm sure there are lots of instances where people would have never learned anything about Vinegar Hill otherwise, whereas simply putting up signs and even just the single kiosk in the location that it is in the original design, I think we're going to have very few people who would actually see that. And that's why rolling all of this into a bigger project of, yeah, it's not just about this little strip of walkway, it's really about this much larger area, and we need to address other things in, you know, we need to put other things in that area to really describe the extent and do something significant in the same way that we know we need to do something significant in Court Square.
The only thing significant about Vinegar Hill Park is the fact that it wasn't implemented. I mean, there was no specific design for it. It was just a space on a map. It may have led to other stages with the Halpern firm or others at that point in time. It never did. And so it was kind of a nice idea 5 or more years ago. So personally, I would stop calling it a park because it's really not a park. The likelihood of it being developed into a park, maybe it would happen, but it's probably not immediate given all the other things that Phil and others have mentioned. But obviously the space needs to be marked and honored and commemorated in some way.
Jeff, do you remember, I think of this every once in a while, something you told me about in Ann Arbor, where there was a transparent sign where you saw the image of what used to be there on the, so you could look through it as if that building was there.
It's actually, well, the one I recall, and I may not been one I told you, but in Ypres, in Belgium, where in the World War I, there's a panorama image that someone had taken prior to World War I, and it's etched into the glass. And when you look west through this sort of transparent photo and you see the transformed landscape, it hits you. But I actually just,
that's what I was, I guess that's what I was thinking of. For some reason, I thought it was in Ann Arbor. But can you imagine that along where those businesses were, from the Omni all the way up to Ridge and West Main? So you could actually see that.
You're reading my mind. I was just thinking, you know, we have images, we have some images of that commercial area, and imagine a marker that's oriented such that we can determine how, you know, what you see beyond you used to be this. So there's a couple ways to communicate this. And I think about in downtown Fredericksburg, it's all built up, and there's the place Charlottesville High School would play a team over there in lacrosse, and right next to the field is this marker about the battlefield at Fredericksburg, and you realize it's like being in Belmont, literally. But they, in this rather small area communicate what happened in that space. And is somewhat of a less is more. And it might be that I don't know, I think of this in terms of it being an epitaph, if you will, of Vinegar Hill. Here's what was here. The simplicity that we communicated with those posters. This is the area. Here's this history of what occurred. And you know, some may say that's too small or not enough, but it's just sort of a somber statement of this is what was here. This is why this is what this marker is telling you. And Jenny, you always say, you know, invite people to ask more. So I think there's an opportunity with that, you know, and maybe even it needs someone like Ann Chestnut to give us some suggestions on what could be on this this kiosk. But I think you have the basis for something simple from the posters. And I think to not put something there, that means nothing's ever going to be there. Sorry.
We owe repentance for the previous action of the city decades ago for putting up the very small, insignificant sign that said it's a forgotten neighborhood. It's not a forgotten neighborhood. I mean, maybe the most eloquent thing we could do is to say it's a much remembered neighborhood.
I don't even know where that plaque went, believe it or not. It was on the concrete wall. I know because I saw a photo.
By the Omni.
Yeah.
It was next to a trash can for a long time.
Yeah. But, you know, a photograph would be very effective, and it wouldn't invite as much maybe contention as words. You know, so I would be in favor of us doing something like that to mark the space and say it's remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to say more's coming, because hopefully more will be coming, but we don't know what that is or when it is.
So the other question is doing community engagement for former residents, and how we would go about doing that and whether we would want to do that before we took any action.
I would say a lot. I mean, there's, again, with the idea of two things. One, presenting the facts. We were able to do that with the posters. So if in a sort of a minimalist approach, there are basic facts and information that can be presented and communicated. I know that at the Jefferson School, they've done a lot with Vinegar Hill. I know there's been, there are accounts and things we can go to. So that's the, you know, the decision is if it's a, you know, how deep of a, you can present the facts, you can present the sort of, here it is, or do you all want to do more? You can, but I think it just continues to delay doing something up there.
Do other people feel that we would need to do engagement before we did some sort of an outdoor display that had a photograph of Vinegar Hill?
We didn't when we put the posters up. I mean, you know, again, if you're talking about something permanent, sure. But I mean, if something to, and, you know, and apologize to, was it Sally maybe, who said, let's use our posters, whoever said that.
Yeah.
We've got those gorgeous posters that are reproducible. I don't know where you put them now. That's probably.
And they're not durable, right? I mean, they're not durable enough to be up.
Well, no, but in terms of temporary, the problem is we had a great space to put them on that construction fence, and I don't know where we would put them now, but unless we put them in the windows.
We have them on the website?
We do, and they were up for more than a year without any fading or, I think they were pretty hardy. They're vinyl.
Yeah, I mean, they could even be reduced into a I don't know, print a handout, put it in a box on the mall. But they're easily reprinted in paper form. If I think about what was done on the buses years ago. I know the HRC produced some panels that were done. I have them in my office. Some of them are a little bit probably we would be cringing at today, but so we could easily print those and again approach a business about putting up inside, or there's nowhere to hang them. What we currently have, there's no thing to affix them to. You put them on a light pole, but probably have to be up high. So maybe a smaller version or something reduced, but they are available.
Well, if they break ground for the old A&P Artful Lodger space, then there'll be a construction fence again, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm that thing kind of went away, but there seems to be some movement. At least I hear some site plan discussions. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Personally, I did like the photograph idea. If we could work with Anne or another designer, and if people felt that wouldn't be objectionable in the community, or have one kind of a meeting and say we're thinking of using this photograph with a very brief caption to reveal what Vinegar Hill looked like from this point. That would be something we could accomplish in the next couple of months.
What would be really cool too is on that reproduction, that photograph poster, whatever you want to call it, is put a QR code and have somebody talking to one of the descendants talking.
Yeah.
Just talking, telling the story.
Exactly.
It could be very, very simple. Not a big, long audio tour, but that's so easily done.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I would love for it to have the photograph and say, Vinegar Hill is a much remembered neighborhood. Now, it's Friday. I went to Bibbs Fish Market every Friday of my life for, umpteen years, and I would love to do it again. And I have a ladder that I got from a furniture store in Vinegar Hill, and I think about it all the time. I mean, that's just everyday life if you were a Charlottesvillian.
Dee Dee, do we have recorded remembrances or something that's already available for use, or would that be something that would need to?
Well, I'll point you to an interesting resource that would obviously we don't own, and but do you remember That World Is Gone, which Hannah Ayers, Ed Ayers' daughter, did along with some young man at the time. There is a lot of great audio in that. And at the time, I remember talking with her and talking about using the audio in some capacity at some point. I mean, she really, at that, I mean, this is years and years and years ago. But I mean, that kind of thing where there's a lot of existing voice out there. Getting permission for it, obviously, is a factor, but it's out there.
Joy.
And Tom Chapman is in the chat is saying Lorenzo Dickerson. Yeah, is coming out. Right. I saw the trailer for that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention, that Lorenzo Dickerson and Jordy Yeager are doing a documentary on Vinegar Hill.
Yeah. And I mean, that has the possibility. I mean, that will almost certainly revitalize interest in Vinegar Hill, and could lead to what we would see as a much different park and other memorializations than we would currently come up with right now. So hopefully that will engage more people in the community, and then we can come up with something better. I think my initial thing was I didn't want to spend $20,000 just to put up some signs that just say this is Vinegar Hill. But a lot of the other options I really like the temporary things, like putting up the photos, possibly putting them further down the mall so that more people would actually see them, and using those existing poster designs and putting them in a small, a place that other places. I really like those ideas.
And I just to get back to the resources for what audio, the other movie that locally made movie that has great audio is West Main Street. That what's that guy's name? Who did that?
Chris Farina.
Yes, right, Chris Farina. And at that time when he was showing that film, he said he really wanted to see it out there. So anyway, I just think there's some good local sources that are worth exploring.
Yeah. I think that there were audio tapes that were made with that old project of From Porch Swings to Patios.
Yeah, I gave all of those because I gave those cassettes to Jordy. He's been transcribing. Well, he's been recording them into
digitizing.
Yeah, digitize. Thank you, thank you, millennials.
But there were 4 or 5 or so that dealt just with the Vinegar Hill neighborhood.
Oh, nice. And those are online. Actually, not all of them. I think, Jeff, you had ones, many more, but the ones that there's some, and the Ridge Street project too. I don't know if any of those, those are all online.
So is there going to be an either online or in-person event soon that Jordy and Lorenzo are doing?
I don't know. I know that there were a lot of the tapes we didn't have a signed release for, and Jordy and I are looking at the list. These like
I mean, for their current project, are they going to have some sort of an event soon?
I haven't heard.
Tom just mentioned it comes out in November.
Because I'm wondering if we could contact them and see if there's a way to have a short engagement either after their event, or people who could sign up to say, yes, we'd like to participate in an event, and maybe we could run 5 ideas by that sort of self-selecting group. If we've really missed the mark, we know it, and we can do something else. And if we come up with some kind of clear consensus, then we can move ahead, because we're kind of being paralyzed in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it might be nice to kind of piggyback off of, you know, this is going to be getting another, you know, kind of another round of attention here in November when their film comes out. And that might be a way to, you know, kind of, yeah.
And they may also have
need to ask them because they own that.
Right,
but if they have an audience and there's a way to share that audience,
right,
that might help us get over this engagement hurdle in a really difficult time when we can't meet or, you know, do it in the usual ways.
And they may also have some ideas on what to do temporarily for the park.
Yeah, so how would we ask them? I mean, Jordy's a former member of the committee.
I can take that on.
But please let them know we're not trying to move in on their turf. We're just wondering if this is a way to facilitate something.
Yeah, I mean, I would frame this as we see them as experts in this area who have done the hard work of engaging on this topic, and that we seek guidance from them as to how we should move forward.
Great. Jeff, are you getting copies of those digital tapes, those tapes that are digitized, and or getting them back?
I gotta find you guys.
That's Dee. Sorry.
I asked Jordy about it a couple of weeks ago, and he's still working on it. So, you know, as always, you know, he's juggling lots of chainsaws at once. So, but he assured me that they are still in his possession and they will get back to us with those. And actually, that's why I was on the other screen. I have the list of, and I'll send it out to you all, who was interviewed in the oral history project, the address if they have one. And this is the list from the original list, whether there was a tape or not. And, but I also have a hard copy of a lot of things. Let me see, they're really incredible. It maps in it and sketches and photos. So there is information, but it's not, like I said, I'll send this out in a second. You can see who's who's in this area and who's not, and something to work from. But yeah, I think, you know, you said it, that the Jeff School's got some projects they're working on with this, and there does at times seem to be, we don't want to tread on what they're doing. And I mean, I understand that. And so, but I think that our focus is Vinegar Hill Park as it was established and doing something there or not. And I think trying to bring it back to something that we can accomplish there and put in place.
But can we stop calling it a park?
You know, I don't know. I think we're the only group that probably does call it that. I think if you saw in the RFPs, there was a reference to what are they, like Vinegar Hill Plaza or something.
I mean,
like that.
Council could certainly redesignate it as not a park and just call it Plaza, and then we don't have to worry about the confusion over the name.
Yeah. I mean, that's available.
We just don't want to give people false impressions, and then there will be disappointment, quite justifiably, that we're not doing justice to Vinegar Hill or people who are coming expecting the attractions of a different kind of park. So if we could stop calling it a park, unless and until, you know, council's going to appropriate a lot of money to develop yet another park when we still have parks we have to take care of now. I don't really see that happening. Maybe it would, but.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And we should continue discussion on that. I think we need to wrap this agenda item up for today. But I think we've had a really good discussion about all of this. I think the one action item for Jeff might be if you could investigate what our options for temporary signage are, like what sort of things exist for getting those created, and cost and things like that, because I have no idea what even exists out there for us to put up a picture or whatever. Okay. Does anybody else have any comments or action they'd like to see taken on this? Okay. And with that, we will move on to the most exciting agenda item, amending the rules of procedure. So these, there are 3 amendments that are in the packet related to how many members are on the committee that we will now have. We'll formally say that we have 12 voting members appointed by council, and that the ex officio member on council is not a voting member. We will change the agenda that we have in the rules of procedure, and we will change the language around the committee itself appointing ex officio members. I think the only bit of language that wasn't quite right in those was that I think we decided last time that we didn't want to give the committee the ability to appoint voting ex officio members, but that language was still in the amendment. Does anybody have any comments on that?
I do think it makes sense that that's clear. The committee not appointing voting members. I just also want to acknowledge, we've talked about this before, and I know the council's talked about just broadly looking at their boards and commissions, that the language does also acknowledge that there may or may not be a council appointed person to this committee. As council's kind of considered, you know, prioritization of where it spends its time. Yep. At any time, a counselor certainly can come in and be here. And there's been some meetings where it's been really helpful for me to kind of bridge that gap. And I have been formally appointed, but as we look at the end of the year, we will be, all the future council will be rechanging all the boards and commissions. I just want to know that I have acknowledged that this is a board or commission that we shouldn't feel like we have to have a counselor at every meeting. And so I just want to be transparent about that's been my recommendation to the council, and it will be to the future council. But honestly, doesn't mean that we shouldn't, you never should be hesitant to invite a counselor to participate if it's going to be advantageous and help to bring progress forward. So if there's any questions with that, I'm happy to take him.
I'd like to say you've been very helpful, Heather, having you on this committee.
Well, there's been a lot of things I think that have involved council and just trying to make those connections. And I plan to be here at every meeting until I'm done, but I just want to be, we're just trying to kind of clarify that, there is a capacity issue at times with counselors, and we're just trying to figure out what's the right balance. But as we come in waves of things that really need council attention now, as we think about, the redesign of the parks, I think there is some advantage to having that liaison to council attending meetings. And so I'm not saying that we're not going to, and the future council may decide to appoint someone formally. I just want to be transparent about the fact that I have identified this, among others, that council has identified as one of the committees that we shouldn't feel like we have to have someone present every meeting. And I also think that with this language, I shouldn't even vote on any minutes and agendas now. I should just observe always. Okay.
I think that was the intention after we, changed them.
That's much more clear for me. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so with that one change to the, so then the change that would be to the proposed amendments that's in the packet would simply be that instead of saying the committee may designate other ex officio members who may be designated as voting or non-voting members, that would instead read, the committee may designate other ex officio members who are non-voting members. So that ex officio members are always non-voting. Okay, yes.
I have a question. Do we need, or should we consider something that is not really an ex officio member, but people that might be working with us from time to time on a short-term initiative?
We have that.
We have that in this.
It's in the procedures that we can have. We can appoint advisory members.
Okay, that's what we're calling them.
Yeah, the difference is that the ex officio members are appointed based on their formal title, and so yes. And the advisory members are appointed as a person, and we can always appoint non-voting advisory members.
Okay, good, thank you.
I think that is also something we should look at doing more often, particularly on subcommittees.
Yeah. Because something like that has come up several times today, where we're reaching out to other people because of the nature of our subject matter. So that's great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, are there any other questions about this or discussion? Okay, could I get a motion to amend the rules of procedure with these 3 items?
So moved.
Also moved.
Or second, whichever one works.
Let's. So Margaret's made the motion, and Dee Dee a second. Please indicate support for this with a voice or visual signal. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Okay. And then I guess the next thing is that with those bylaws passed, we need to formally appoint Robert Watkins's position to the committee as an ex officio member, which is more of a sort of just and not really a critical thing, but procedurally important. So Robert, what is your position at the city?
I am the assistant preservation planner.
Okay. So could I get a motion to appoint the assistant preservation planner for the city of Charlottesville as an ex officio member of the Historic Resources Committee?
I enthusiastically nominate Robert as an ex officio member.
I'll enthusiastically second.
Okay, we have Would it please indicate with a visual or audio signal that you support this? And all opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you all very much.
I'm glad that you can stay on the call, Robert. Okay.
So yeah, you all, I will say, kudos to Robert. He does more behind the scenes for so many things. I don't think folks realize. I mean, our BAR meetings run seamlessly, and what Robert has to do, and he's also he's the backup in so many other things going on in NDS. He even for a brief time this summer may be doing it again, is in charge of recording address changes in GIS. So Robert his plate is full, and I think he's done everything in NDS except maybe run the department. But
I'm not the director. Thank you very much, Jeff.
No, you're much appreciated, Robert.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Your organization's amazing.
I do really appreciate it.
Okay, so now moving on to staff updates. And we are running about 10 minutes behind where our schedule is.
I know, Phil, that you're trying to get the meeting finished by 12:50. I don't want to speak for Jeff, but I don't think anything major has changed with the different projects that we're working on. There's been a consultant selected for the downtown mall study. We can send the information out. I don't remember their names, but that's moving forward. Penn Park is moving forward. I know the Historical Society is planning to have the article in their journal, maybe by the end of the year or sometime early next year. And then we're moving forward with BAR stuff. I don't really have any updates other than that.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Coordinated agenda for the September HRC meeting. This coming up earlier. So I don't know, Robert, do you want to recharacterize what I think you said, right?
I know that I'm sorry, for the October meeting, I know that Mabel Wilson, it seems like, will be joining us at 11:30.
Mentioned.
Yes. So, you know, with 5 minutes, I'm happy to meet Phil or with Jelaine sometime in the next month, but I think it would be really good if we're going to have her join us, if we can have a concrete set of questions and parameters. And also if we want to ask her back again for a more in-depth work session, if that's something we'd still like to do. I think it would be good to kind of have just parameters in mind when we meet with her in October.
Okay, I think that's great. Jelaine, if you would have time in the next month to discuss that, and I'm sure you want to have some discussions with Dr. Wilson before. And so yeah, I think we should just know that we need to figure that out before the next meeting to set the agenda in a good concrete.
Yeah, okay, looking forward to it. I'm so glad she can do it.
Yeah, and for I still think there might be interest in Ann Bailey with some sort of webinar with Ann Bailey. Mm-hmm. So Jelaine, I can draft some sort of email. You might already know Dr. Bailey, but if you still want to reach out to her, I can write an email for you.
Yeah.
So you can reach out to her.
Yeah, I think it'd be especially helpful after we've spoken with Dr. Wilson, you know, to just kind of keep building our knowledge, I think, you know, of what it means to kind of collect data on this and absorb and interpret, you know.
Okay. And then I know that Kathy Johnson Harris was not able to join us. I can email, and it seems like Kay knows her as well, and I'm sure others of you as well. So she in the past has shown interest in Vinegar Hill Park. And I'm sure that she still probably does care about what we're doing. So hopefully we can talk with her in the next month, and she might be able to join us so that future conversations about Vinegar Hill might be more productive.
Yeah, that would be great. Are there any other agenda related items for the next meeting?
Phil, I just might add that I did like your idea of having some sort of a set of concrete recommendations for Court Square memorialization in the parks, to have something maybe sent to council by the end of the year. So maybe if we can just keep in mind by the December or January meetings to have some sort of directive planned and ready to be sent on. I think that's something we should work towards.
Yeah, I agree.
And hearing us say the next meeting month is October is just really blowing my mind. I'm like, wait, it's 2 months from now. No, it's not. It's next month.
I feel the same way. I'm weird, huh? Particularly for the Historic Resources Committee, because everything is like past and present at the same time. Any announcements? Okay. And with that, we can conclude this meeting.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to
Thanks,
our
everyone.
staff.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great month.
Machine.
Have a good weekend.